transformation. I'm Patricia Parham, your hostess and one of the designers of the Golden Pathway website, and we're very excited to do part 2 today of looking at how to chart our personal natal astrology on and make calls on it every day with Patrick Danahy. He's going to help us take worldly astrology out of our chart, replace it with Ascended Master Astrology, and learn how to make informed calls or prayers to on Mother Mary's cosmic clock. And we're going to invite the Ascended Masters to help us take dominion over our personal and planetary karma for our healing, freedom, and God mastery. I think you all know Reverend Patrick Danahy, who's been in the teaching since 71 and was an astrologer for the Church Universal and Triumphant for many years. He also did a lot of stumping, and he was ordained in 1994 and developed a curriculum and helped instruct aspirants on the ministerial training program for our church. So Reverend Danahy has a bachelor's in psychology, is a licensed hearing specialist, and a ministerial counselor. He lives in Bozeman with his wife, Ann. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. So we're on, let's see, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I think that so how many people were not here two months ago? Okay, okay, so we're going to start pretty much from the beginning. I think that that is to say, we'll have a little introduction here. You know, your personal astrology, your natal chart is pretty much just like a snapshot of the sky when you were born. So, and then you carry that snapshot with you, and it has a little bit of a vibe in it. So that vibe sticks with us. It will incline us towards certain proclivities, certain ways of understanding things. Everybody processes life a little bit differently. They perceive differently. And then how they process what they perceive is also an individual matter. So astrology is somewhat of an abstract way of looking at some of the subtle characteristics of human life. Now, the most important thing about astrology, in my opinion, is this, and that's that there are a lot of people who made their ascension and returned it to God not knowing a thing about astrology. At the same time, beloved Lord Maitreya has told us that there comes a time on the path when if we know our astrology and we can make calls on our astrology, it will be vital to our success and progress. So first off, it's a secondary issue. A lot of people ascend without knowing their astrology. Now, they still have to handle the energies behind it. They still have to pass their spiritual tests while they're here on the earth. And that's the real key to it. But knowing astrology, if you apply it correctly, can help you to pass those tests a little more easily, a little more quickly. So that's the purpose of astrology. Now, does everyone have a copy of their own natal chart? Or at least a list of planetary positions for your natal chart? Okay, I'm seeing yes. Good. Now, I don't know how, if you look it up in a book or if you talk to an astrologer, they'll tell you lots of things based on the chart and based on the transits and that sort of thing. And after you get that additional information, which may be helpful or may not be helpful, we still got our life to live, and we still have our tests to pass, and we still have our initiations to take. So the question is, how can we look at our astrology in a way that is going to help us to move ahead spiritually? first, and then just move ahead, because we're living life and you might as well move ahead instead of stand still. I have a couple of, and you had the handouts, I think, right? So you were able to download those. Now, those of you who were here for the 2 months ago for the making calls on your transit planets, you'll find that the format here is very much the same. And so I'd like you to turn to the My Natal Astrology form, which is the template for clearing your natal charts based on Ascended Master Astrology. Now this is the chart. Yeah, there you go. That's the one. And so what we're going to do first is actually it's somewhat of a mechanical or methodical thing. This is how you do it. So how do you take the information that's in your chart? How do you put it into a call format? How do you make the call? How do you make the prayer? How do you make the decree? And how do you make a specific call about your astrology? So if you look at page 2 of that handout, which has My Natal Astrology up at the top, it starts out and says, in the name of my mighty I am presence and holy Christ self. And of course, that's how we start all of our calls and all of our decrees and prayers, because we know that the soul down here on earth, filled with a spark of God, but also with karma from many lifetimes of making good and not so good decisions. And, you know, sometimes you can make really good decisions that are still karma making. And so the phrase out of the old Hindu tradition is, 2 paths there are that bind, one brass, one gold. So you can live a pretty good life, but still be tied up in the living of life. You can live a pretty difficult life and then be tied up in the difficulties of life. Instead of that, whether our life happens to be particularly pleasant or difficult at a given moment, and of course the wheel of fortune turns, and everybody has a test to pass, so everybody has their tests as they live their life, no matter how good it may look from the outside. But let's take a look then here at the sun, and to fill in that first blank, I call to, and then in parentheses it says, call to your ascended master. Now, beloved Lord Maitreya told us that there are masters who are assigned to handling the different planets, the different solar systems, the different this, the different that, the interactions, the astrology, and so forth. And are also different masters do have agreements to help balance astrology for people under certain circumstances. But he said he wasn't going to tell us who had those assignments. Rather, he wanted us to make the call to the Ascended Master of choice, who you would like to make a call to help you with, and in this case, it's to take dominion over your natal sun. So the first blank there, you fill in, who is the master that you would like to have help you with your sun? And of course, the sun includes your I am presence, and it includes your destiny, an aspect of your destiny in this lifetime. So I call to, and the Ascended Master, when it says your Ascended Master, you can do that for any Ascended Master you like, the one who you may think is your sponsor, or you may choose Helios and Vesta, who we know from the cosmic clock that Helios and Vesta are in charge of Aries, and they're on the 3 o'clock line of the cosmic clock, and they are associated with the sun in our solar system. So some people would call to Helios and Vesta to take dominion over my natal sun. Other people would call to whomever they like, Jesus, Mother Mary, Saint Germain, whatever master seems to make sense to you for your vitality, your inner essence, your light, the light that you're shining on in this lifetime, represented by your sun. What master would you like to have help you take dominion over that? Now, the next line then is so many degrees of such and such a sign. So you have to look at your chart now. And your chart, you can see the sun. Everybody has a sun. It's just a circle with a little dot in it. and it's going to be somewhere on that chart. There's only 12 lines, so you just go around the clock until you find it. Now, is there anybody who's having trouble finding their sun? If so, feel free to unmute and say, yeah, where is it? Okay. But if you have it, if I don't have anybody call in or talk to me, then I'm going to presume that it's okay and that you found it.
Yeah,
So then
where is it?
Okay, on your chart, do you have your natal chart?
Yes.
Okay, now in your natal chart, do you see a circle with a dot in it? Which is the symbol for your sun?
I'm looking. I don't know the video stopped in my computer. I mean my phone.
Well, I see. So is your
go back.
chart on your phone, or is your chart
I'll
on a
look for
piece
it.
of
I
paper?
just had it.
Okay, you have to look on your chart because it'll be there, and it's the only one that's a circle with a dot in the middle.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good. You got it. All right, good. That's what I like. Now, that sun, that little circle with a dot in it, also says that it's at so many degrees and it's in such and such a sign. Do you find that, Yvonne?
No, because I'm looking for. I went out. It was my friend Trinidad who forwarded.
Oh, I see. So you don't have
I'm
your
glad
chart.
she did.
You don't have your chart in front of you then.
No, not
Okay, well,
the
you'll need to
one.
get you'll need to get your chart in order to do this. Or you have to have a list
Okay.
of your planetary positions for your birthday. You can find that in your ephemeris, which you can also look up. So one way or the other. All right, now, so we'll go ahead and on your chart, some of you will just automatically know this in your head already because you've been looking at it for a few years or several years or decades. And other people, it's brand new and they have to figure out what the sign looks like and so forth. So that's all fine. But anyway, so now does everybody have their sun with the degrees and the zodiac sign that the sun is in? Now, oftentimes on the chart, it will say something like 3 degrees, 27 minutes, and even 50 seconds sometimes. Well, that's fine. I just, and you can put that in if you like, but all you need is the degrees, 3 degrees. That's it. If you want to say 3 degrees in so many minutes, that's fine too. Okay, Raphael, you found it. All right, good. That's fine. So put it down write down on your piece of paper there that it's, Raphael, in your case, whether it was 2 degrees Leo. Okay, good. Now, so that has the sun and its degrees and its sign, and then the copy on the script continues saying, for I am ever radiating, and the verb is going to change according to the planet. But as you know from the handout that has the keywords for the planets, and you can download this from the Golden Pathway site. So the sign for the sun is radiating. Now I wrote that in here. Each sign has an example of radiating for the sun, but radiating could also be warmth. It could also be dynamism. It could also be the expression of life. It could be the elan vital. So there's a lot of different ways you can express the vitality of the sun, the life-giving qualities of the sun. But radiating is one good word for that. So that's what I chose, and you can add to that or subtract it or substitute it as you feel inclined. I am ever radiating the God quality. So what you do for the God quality is you look at what is the zodiac sign that the sun is in. And for instance, Raphael just came up with 2 degrees Leo. So if in Leo, then you look at the chart, which we had on the screen in the first minute, and then you go to the sign. Yeah, so then you go to the sign on your chart here, and you just find the sign that your sun is in. So if your sun is in Sagittarius, you go up to the top of the chart there where it says Sagittarius. If like with Raphael, if it's in Leo, then you go around the chart until you get to Leo over there, which would be, the 7th. Seventh sign. So is everybody finding their cosmic clock hierarchy for the sun? If it's in Leo, you just go to Leo, and the hierarchy is the goddess of liberty with God gratitude. And if it's up here in Scorpio, you find it with mighty cyclopeia and God victory. So is there anybody who is having trouble making that step? Okay, Anna, do you have the charts that we're talking about here? You have your natal chart? Do you know the sign your sun is in? So find that. Oh, okay, Anna, if you don't have a chart, I can't help you because you need a chart. And you can, if you put in free natal chart on the internet, you'll find a place that can print one out for you. But you're not going to be able to do this exercise if you don't have that chart. Okay, so now we have the sun. So many degrees of such and such a sign, and then the sign that that's in also has the God quality. If it's Leo, it's the God quality of God gratitude. If it's in Sagittarius, it's the God quality of God victory. If it's Aquarius, it's the God quality of God love. So let's say we have it at 3 degrees Aquarius. I'm radiating the God quality. You're right in the God quality for the sign that your sun is in. And if it were in Aquarius, it would be God love. And then beloved is the hierarch, who would be beloved Saint Germain in the sign of Aquarius. But if it's in Leo, it'll be the goddess of liberty. So that's all you do is you make that relationship between those two. And then you fill in this space. So when it's all done, you say, I call to the Ascended Master that I chose to take dominion over my natal sun at 3 degrees Aquarius, or whatever your sun sign is.
Gemini.
For I am ever radiating, or if it's Gemini, that's fine. Then you say so many degrees in Gemini, for I am ever radiating what's the God quality of Gemini?
Wisdom, no?
Okay, good. So that's it. So I am radiating God wisdom with beloved, and who's the hierarch with God wisdom and Gemini on that final?
El Moria.
All right. So I am radiating God wisdom with beloved El Moria.
I have this natal chart, but I don't have it with me. I mean, an old one that was done.
Well, you have to have something to work with.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
right.
unless you have it, unless you have the charts, unless you have your place positions memorized, you need to be able to get it from somewhere. So in my life, my circumstances, and in the planet Earth. So that's the call then. By making this call on the sun, take dominion over the sun at so many degrees Gemini. I'm ever radiating the God qualities of God wisdom and beloved El Moria in my life circumstances and on the planet Earth. So that's the concept. And then we go through and we do the same thing with the moon and Mercury, and step by step through all the other things. You just transfer the information from your chart into your call sheet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do the same thing with the moon now. So you pick the Ascended Master that you want to have help you with the moon. In some cases, it would be Mother Mary, for instance, because most people associate her with a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet in the book of Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so that makes sense. But it can be any master that you want to have help you with your moon. And of course, the moon is associated with emotions and so forth. The term we use in here is take dominion over my natal moon at so many degrees of such and such a sign, for I am ever receiving, reflecting, and magnifying, and then the God quality of the sign it's in. So someone give me an example. What sign is your moon in?
I can give you an example.
Hi, mine is in,
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm in my car here and I'm just so excited. My moon is in Aquarius, 13 degrees.
Your moon is in Aquarius at 15 degrees?
at 13 degrees with
13 degrees. Okay, good. So then you just mark it on the form. Take dominion over my natal moon at 13 degrees. You said Aquarius?
Aquarius, yes.
Okay, good. At 13 degrees Aquarius, for I am ever receiving, reflecting, and magnifying the God quality of Aquarius. What's that? You can look it up.
Would that
Look at.
be beloved Saint Germain?
That's exactly it. The communicating God love of beloved Saint Germain in my life, my circumstances, and planet Earth. Now, do you see how, so that's an
Right.
example. Now, when you have the moon, you know, you got all sorts of stuff going on there because the moon is just a reflector. And Saint Germain, as I've mentioned this before, but Saint Germain says that the moon can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So if you make the calls on the moon, like you have established in this setup here, that moon becomes a best friend. Why? Because it's not amplifying all of the political unrest that's on the earth. I mean, it does in a sense, but for your calls and what you're doing and what you're sending to the moon and what you're receiving back from the moon, it's all Buddhic alchemy. It's your mastery of the circumstances. And it's establishing God love and the God of freedom for the earth, our beloved Saint Germain, is what that moon is reflecting. And, you know, you can actually take dominion over that whole thing and call for the moon to be encircled, call for the binding of the electronic belt patterns that it can't be reflected or amplified or magnified. And that moon becomes the friend then, not only of mankind, but the friend of the Ascended Masters. So this is the point about the sons and daughters of God on the earth who are operating both in spirit and in matter, that we can take dominion over the earth with the combined causal bodies of the Great White Brotherhood, a great and a mighty momentum that can change the course of history because we are not mindlessly receiving and reflecting and magnifying whatever happens to come along, but rather consciously we're receiving, reflecting, and magnifying divine love of our beloved Saint Germain in our life, circumstances, and planet Earth.
Can I ask a question
Yes?
on this? I have 28 degrees Capricorn for my moon. Isn't it best to choose the master of that sign, the great divine director, then to be the one to help you? Or are you saying
Well,
you
I mean, I'll put
anyone?
it, I'll put it this way. You can do that. It's perfect. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. And if that's what rhymes for you, that's what you should do.
Okay.
But everybody makes their own choice about that. And they may have different reasons for doing that.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And Maitreya specifically said he wasn't going to tell us who to call. You should make the call out of where your heart takes you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now, does everyone have their moon taken care of? Did you fill in the blanks there and fill out your little call?
Yep.
All right, let's do one more then. We're going to do Mercury, and then I'll leave the rest of it up to you because you already know how to do it. Now, Mercury, I call to who's the Ascended Master that you want to have help you with your Mercury. Mercury is associated with communications, thinking, activities of the mind, skills, and
Moria. I said Gemini and Moria.
Sure.
I don't know.
Now, so I mean, okay, now that's your choice, though. I'm purposely not going anywhere on that first blank. I'm telling you to fill in the first blank.
Oh, there you go. Got it.
See, yeah, that's your choice, and different people, you know, will hear it or think it or feel it or do it different ways. So that's their business. It's not mine.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm a Gemini, and my Mercury's in Gemini. So, beloved Lord El Moria, I chose him for my sun in Gemini, but now my Mercury's in Gemini. Also, can we have the same master helping us in two separate planets, like the sun and Mercury, or should we choose someone different?
Well, let me ask you: do you at this time have two planets in? That you have to deal with here with the sun and the Mercury? You yourself have to deal with two planets, right?
Well, having the sun, being born with the sun in Gemini, and then my Mercury is in Gemini.
Okay, that's fine. So that's my point, though, is that if you can handle two planets, so can the master.
Aha. Thank you. I didn't understand what you meant. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I call to the master of my choice to take dominion over my natal Mercury at so many degrees of such and such a sign. And I am ever thinking, understanding, and communicating what's the God quality of that sign. It could be God wisdom, it could be God control, it could be God obedience, it could be God victory, it could be God vision. And then the attendant master, if it's wisdom in Gemini, that's going to be Moria. And some people would like to add God Mercury or Hermes Trismegistus to that. So again, it's all a matter of what works for you, what sounds right, what feels right, what seems good for you. Retrograde planets don't matter. You can go ahead, someone's sending me a little note here. It doesn't matter if a planet is retrograde, you just include that in your call. At 3 degrees, you can say 3 degrees, and you can just put in retrograde if you want at such and such a sign. So at 3 degrees Gemini retrograde, that's fine. There's no problem with that. It doesn't change the call. You just include the detail of information. Now, if you get into studying astrology, you're going to find there's a ton of stuff that comes up to think about. And all you do is say, well, how can I make a call on that? For instance, we had an eclipse recently, and there's eclipses always are a time of when people get excited about astrology, and certainly about the phenomenon of an actual eclipse, a solar or a lunar eclipse. And that's fascinating. So at the same time, an eclipse just is something that the sun and the moon are doing, and they're going to be at such and such a degree of such and such a sign, the same sign or the opposite sign on the zodiac. And so you just, the call is the same. You say, I call for the encircling of the sun at so-and-so, and I call for the encircling of the moon at so-and-so, and the eclipse. And that's it. Now, if you happen to know that the eclipse is supposed to do something like bring King Kong, or what was the name of that? King Kong, was that the big gorilla? Yeah, some kind of a monster, under the surface of the earth. And people will have all these wonderful, exciting mythological stories and structures and fear programs. Then you can go ahead and include that in there. And I call for the encircling of all doubt and fear, human questioning, records of death, concerns about disruptions, whether it's flood or fire or tornado or earthquake, or fears about upsets in the social system and so forth. So whatever those things are that come to your attention, make a call. The basic structure of the call is what we're learning to do right here. And it's just that simple, and it's just that effective, because it takes the planet and all the things associated with what the planet's doing and puts it in the dominion of the Ascended Masters of the Great White Brotherhood and the hierarchs of the zodiac signs, which you have both in decree 6.04 in your decree book, and you also have it on the chart that we printed out here for you on the cosmic clock format. Okay, so that is the procedure for putting together your calls. Now I want to show you how to put it on this chart. So let's look at the chart now. So everybody's filled out their sun, moon, and Mercury at this time. All right, so let's look at the chart now that has the cosmic clock format on it. Now, the cosmic clock format is just a regular astrology format in a certain respect, but usually when we do Western astrology, over here at the 9 o'clock line, which is, where between the lines, spaces 8 and 9 there, between Virgo and Libra, on a normal Western worldly astrology chart, which is based on how things look in the world, then that 9 o'clock line would actually be where your ascendant is. And then they would wrap all these zodiac positions around based on on the moment you were born on that 9 o'clock line. Here in this chart, we do it a little differently. And that's that. Let's go up to the top. Let's scan up to the top of the chart. Thank you. Okay, so you notice here that we start out at the very top, and you have 12 o'clock is at the very top of the line. And then you move to the right there, and that space of what they call the 12 o'clock line, which is also 0 to 1. So it could be 12 or 0. But like the clock on the wall, the analog clock on the wall, you got the 12 o'clock line up at the top. And that's the zodiac sign of Capricorn. And the zodiac sign of Capricorn is ruled by the great divine director. And its God quality is God power. Now that means that any planet that moves through Capricorn is going to be in the territory or under the dominion of the great divine director. So when you look, if there's something in your chart that has a planet in Capricorn, then that planet has whatever its own characteristics are, like the sun radiates, the moon reflects and magnifies, Mercury communicates and thinks. It's going to be doing that thinking and communicating, or that reflecting and magnifying, or that radiating divine presence and power inside or with the influence of the great divine director and the quality of God power. Now, Raphael, I see a sign. I see a sign says, but I'm not quite sure what your question is. So my point here is that from the standpoint of putting together your cosmic clock now, find on your birth chart any planets that are in Capricorn. And then just go ahead and with your pencil, go ahead and write that in the blank space under the, on the first circle in. Or if you want to, you can write it in the second space, but it doesn't matter. But just go ahead and write it in there. And then you'll be seeing what it's like on the cosmic clock. And when you do,
Patrick, I have, this is Maria. I had a question. You said something about the number 9 before we got into the, and I missed that.
Oh, okay. I was just making a reference to a normal worldly astrology chart. You don't really have to worry about that.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Okay, so that's Capricorn now. And if you have a planet in your natal chart that's in Capricorn, go ahead and write it into this form here so that it will be under the 12 o'clock line. And if you have 3 planets, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have another question. Sorry. So
no, that's all right.
This is Western astrology, our clock. Now I have nothing in Capricorn at all, like 0 in Western, but I understand that in the Eastern astrology, which is I think with the moon, that I actually am a Capricorn and not a Gemini, but that has nothing to do with this.
No, because they use a completely different system.
Got it. Thank you.
Basically what the Eastern chart does is it turns the whole thing 23 degrees. So that means that 2/3 of your placements will change between an Eastern and a Western chart.
Wow.
Also, then how they're interpreted then becomes different. And I actually studied the Eastern system and got, credentialed in it and so forth. And I've had a lot of fun with it. And there are a few things that I use from it specifically, but unless you're already interested in getting into that, it's just a source of confusion. So
yeah,
I don't want to go there right now. But yeah, things change with different ways of looking at the sky. And the interesting thing is that the Eastern sky is very much like the same sky that a ship captain uses to navigate by night, because it's based on the fixed stars, not on the first day of spring.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that's the difference there. And there's something to learn from each system. But right now, what we're doing is we're taking the Western system and we're putting it on the cosmic clock.
Great. Thank you so much. That's
You bet.
awesome. I learned so much with you. Thank you.
So this is
So some people have planets in Capricorn and some don't. If you don't have a planet, then just move to the next one. Aquarius. Who has something in Aquarius? Go ahead and find it and write it in that space. Okay, we have a very basic question here. Why does the sky affect our karma? And we'll answer that later because right now we're going through just some mechanical stuff about getting this chart done. And I want to get you started on it so that you can continue with it as you will. Now, did everybody find, let's see, let's go ahead and, you already know where your moon is. So did you find where to put your moon on the cosmic clock sheet? For instance, if the moon is in Gemini, then you find Gemini number 5 and you put it in the blank space there. So has everybody put their moon in there? Okay, good. And then go ahead and put your Mercury in wherever that fits in your cosmic clock. So the mechanics of this little exercise is that you start, as we did with the sun and the moon and Mercury, you start first by filling out the astrology, the call form, the natal astrology call form, and then you also place the planet on your cosmic clock chart. And those are the two exercises. Patricia, I got a message from you, but it moved a little too quickly for me to read it.
I was responding to someone who asked where they could get the templates.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I was
Thank
just
you.
telling them it's on the Golden Pathway website under seminars and
Okay,
under
good.
today's seminar. That's what I've been told.
All right, good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let's see. So I'd like to know, does everyone feel confident, or is there anyone who doesn't feel confident about what to do with the next step, which in this case would be to fill in the blank spaces on Venus, because we already did the sun, moon, Mercury, and then to fill in the blanks on Venus and then put Venus on the cosmic clock chart. Someone asked a question about intercepted houses. It makes no difference because they're intercepted only by the way they're drawn on the circle. The actual size of the constellation is the same. So you still, even if it's intercepted, you'd still go and put it on the chart the way it is. Now there can be, subtleties of interpretation about what that means if a sign or a house is intercepted, and then you can look at that, deal with that, and include it in a call. But in reality, that's an artifact of creating the chart, because the constellation itself doesn't change. The zodiac sign itself is still there, whether it's intercepted or not. And so that's one of the nice things about the cosmic clock chart, is that that particular artifact doesn't occur. It's perfectly all right whether you fill it in now or later. That's not the point. I'm not we're not going to actually fill out everything. It's going to leave you with some work to do at your convenience. But I just want to make sure that that everybody knows how to take the next step. Okay, good. Now, one of the things that that I mentioned on the front of the call sheet here is that you can use you can use the calls that you're writing in on your chart and just make that call in the, say in the morning, for example, and you will have done a very nice job of handling the planets in your natal chart. Just like we learned a month and a half, 2 months ago, how to do that with the charts that are overhead or in the ephemeris or the astrology for today, and how to make a call on that. And if you go through that process, and in the beginning, you know, you're kind of going, well, a little here and a little there, and you're looking at this and looking at that and putting it together, and it takes a few extra minutes to do that. But after you get onto it, you can make those calls, and it's probably about a 5-minute program to include in the morning to handle your personal astrology and your transiting astrology. And you will have taken these planets, however well you understand them, or however novel and lacking in understanding there is in the beginning. That's all fine. Turn it over to the master, because it's you might say it's old hat for the master. The master knows how to handle that stuff. And by making the call, you will be getting the assistance on that. Our beloved Lanello said, pay attention to the astrology and ask Moria to help you. So whatever lines of the clock you're dealing on, you make those calls like we talked about here with the cosmic clock, and you call for the hierarchs and the master of your choice. But from the standpoint of understanding astrology in total, or any aspect of that, call to Moria as a master astrologer to help you have the understanding to make progress in your personal mastery as you handle your personal and planetary astrology. Are there questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for the transiting, you have to have an ephemeris and figure that out differently than, right? Or
Yeah, that's what we did a couple of months ago. I think the recording is on the Golden Pathway website. And so the mechanics, however, are the same. It's just that you're looking at it on a daily basis, but you make a call on the sun, you make a call on the moon. The sun is in a certain degree of a certain place up in the sky today, and the moon is someplace up in the sky today. And so that's what the making the calls in the transits is all about. And then you call to the master of your choice, and whoever the master of the sign is, like Sagittarius, for instance, with Lord Maitreya. And you call for Lord Maitreya to take command of the planets in Sagittarius, that they outpicture only God victory. All right.
right.
Now, so, you know, basically what's going on here and is that in my experience, people have learned a certain amount about their astrology, and they've talked to different astrologers about this or that or the other thing. But Maitreya, in his Pearl, The Astrology for Twin Flames, and I have that referenced at the bottom of the front sheet of the template for clearing your natal planets. It's footnote number 1. Beloved Lord Maitreya, Astrology for Twin Flames, Pearls of Wisdom, volume 2853, the Summit Lighthouse. So you can look it up online, or you can look it up in the book if you have the printed material, and you'll learn a lot about how to relate to your astrology from Lord Maitreya.
Where
and he
online
said,
can we
don't,
find that?
and he, what's that?
Where online can we find that? So sorry.
Well, if you go to the Summit Lighthouse, which is tsl.org,
Okay.
and then you go in there to the membership page,
Right.
and then click Pearls.
Okay.
There you go. And then you just look up the Pearl, the volume number and the master, and it'll be right there, and you'll be able to print it out and read it.
Great.
As
And
you
this
like.
is the one specifically for Twin Flames.
That's right. And it's great. It's only 1 pearl long. It's pretty easy to digest. But he makes some very specific warnings. He says, don't let people put a whammy on you. A lot of people find themselves limited by their astrology, and that's because they haven't had the Ascended Master mastery over it. And he says, let no influence in your life except for the Ascended Master Astrology.
Beautiful.
Or as we used to say, back when we were first doing all of this stuff, one of my little mantras that I would have in my classes was, the only reason to study astrology is too. And then the whole class would say together, challenge it.
Uh-huh.
Now we can talk about, cooperating with trines and sextiles and doing this and doing that. And that's all fine. And it is true that a certain aspect of karma and the energies that we deal with will be reflected in the chart. And all of that, I don't argue with any of that, but I say, let there be no influence in your life except for the Ascended Master Astrology. And that means that throughout the thing that all of the different astrological systems have in common is that they have the same 12 zodiacs. Now there's some modern stuff that try and throw in a 13th and so forth, and that's fine. Good luck with all of that. As it is right now, and as it will be for quite some time, you can be comfortable with the 12. And each one of those 12 zodiacs has a master assigned to it. That's in decree 6.04. So actually what I do with my own chart is I make a call I use the ephemeris, make a call on the planets for the day. And then I know my own natal chart pretty well. And I would say that I make a call on my own natal chart maybe once a month, and I just put my hand on the chart otherwise and figure that I already have the matrix inside. Putting my hand on the chart is enough to handle all of that energy. And then I like to do decree 604. Well, it's interesting. I've done 604 like regularly when I very first came in the teachings. 604 had just been released along with Mother Mary's teachings. Mother was still working on its final form. And we were asked at that time not to even bother with any other astrology so that we could get the cosmic clock astrology clear in our world. And in this case, if you want to look at your natal charts and so forth and so on, make the calls and put them and give them into the dominion of the Ascended Masters, and then deal with the Ascended Masters in handling your astrology, you will be moving on the right track. And you won't be caught up in a bunch of psychic nonsense, old records, bad habits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Let's see now. We have about 10 minutes left for the hour. And are there any questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You said a beautiful, what sounded like decree or mantra or statement when you were giving an example of anything else you wanted to include while calling out, but you were very specific for it to be like doing away with any confusion or delusion. You were including something that had the essence of protecting. Where can we find, was that something that you just made for yourself, or is that like?
Well, I'm only hearing about 60% of what you're saying. So do me a favor, talk just a little bit slower, and I'll try and follow you.
Of course. You were saying, you used a statement you shared with us in regards to when we were making a call, that we could include anything else that we thought necessary, but you put one in the essence of protection, to do away with confusion, or to do away with delusion, or to do away with anything negative. Was that something that you just created, or is that a mantra we can find somewhere? Because I did love the way you said.
Well, what I would suggest you do is read Lord Maitria's Pearl, and then lift out of there any phrases that rhyme for you.
Okay.
And then you can include that in your call. So, for instance, let no astrological influence other than Ascended Master Astrology in your world. You can turn that into a very specific call.
Okay.
But his statement or his warning was, don't allow yourself to. And then you can say, I shall not, or you can say, in the name of my mighty and present soul, myself, I demand that we take complete dominion over all worldly astrology and replace it completely with Ascended Master Astrology, for I am the only presence acting here. See the point?
I do see the point. You said it not in this instance when you were saying let no other influence. It was earlier when we were making the calls out to the planets in transit. You said a statement that was protective in essence.
I see. I'm sorry. I just don't know exactly what it is you're referring to. So
no worries.
I guess one or the other of us would have to review the tape.
On Lord Maitria's Pearl, can you give the particulars, volume what? Like what when we go to Pearl?
Well, sure. Now again, that's on that's at the bottom of the page that's called A Template for Clearing Your Natal Planets Based on Ascended Master Astrology, and it's footnote number 1. It says, Lord Maitreya, Astrology for Twin Flames, Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 28, number 53. It's dated 1985.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
1985. Okay.
I have a
Thank you.
question about the ephemeris.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? I've never used that. Is that something that's available for the entire year? That's not like where the
Yeah,
sun is?
actually, there's one that there's one that you can download from Golden Pathway, based on the class that I gave like a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Okay, and maybe is that class archived on your website as well, Pastor?
Is what on the website?
Was the class archived? Is there? Can I review
Yes,
that
yes.
class?
The Golden Pathway has all that archived. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And then the ephemeris, that just shows you where the sun is that day and what
Well,
all
the sun,
planets-
it shows you all of the planets. So you'll want to
Okay.
download the ephemeris printer. I find it easiest to print it out, and then you'll have it there. And then you can also download the sun and the moon chart that the church put together. That's also on the website there from that lecture.
Okay, and is it just better to just do that every day and not get overwhelmed and look ahead with
Oh,
everything?
you know, if you enjoy looking at things and you have ideas of different patterns and so forth that you want to work with, that's fine. It's entirely up to you. But if you handle it day by day, you will handle it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Surely. Now, I want to just make a general comment here, and that's that you notice that we haven't talked about interrelations among the planets. We haven't talked about conjunctions or oppositions or trines or squares or any of that kind of stuff. That'll be for another time. If you do it this way now, you will be handling the energy. And then the more you know about astrology, the more of the inner workings of astrology you can consciously address through your calls. But by taking the planets to the degree, like Lord Maitreya told us in the Pearls for Twin Flame, by making the calls which we have set up in a basic format here, that will be handling that energy. You will be working with the master. You will be working with your Ascended Master Astrology. You know, I'm reminded of a call, which I just love, from a lady, Portia, gave it to us years and years ago, and it said, call for the encircling of the electronic belts of all planets, I always say, and stars, planets and stars in the solar system and beyond, and for the release of the causal body of the wise master teachers who have evolved from those planets and stars. A very curious construction, she said, from those planets and stars that have them. So the point is that just like people have causal bodies and electronic belts, in other words, the recordings in Akasha of all decisions, all feelings, all thinking, all action. So also there's the collective karma or the collective Akashic record for the planets and stars. They got electronic belts, stuff that wasn't quite good enough. And they got causal bodies, stuff that's made of the very fabric of God's own consciousness. So we call for the encircling of the electronic belts for ourselves, for each other, for the world at large, for all of the planets and stars in the solar system and beyond. And we call for the release of the causal bodies of the wise master teachers who have evolved from those planets and stars that have them. And that have them means that have causal bodies and that have wise master teachers who have evolved from those planets. Now, for instance, Pluto may or may not have a causal body and may or may not have, masters who have ascended from the planet Pluto. And it's good because it's kind of a fake planet anyway. And there's all sorts of what you call esoteric teachings that go along with all that stuff. But the point is that there are plenty of bright shining stars in the sky, and every one of them are representative of the consciousness of some ascended master, and that's what we learn to work with then. We don't sit here and work with all the relative interactions and stuff. I remember Mother said that when we do our work in the world, no matter how clean it is or how fine the people are we work with, when we come home, we realize we picked up a little energy. And then we have to kind of clean that off, maybe take a shower, have something to eat, take a rest, perhaps do a couple of calls, whatever it is that is your way of handling that energy. But then we get back into our own true vibration. And that's where we live and move and have our being. Okay.
Patrick, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening, I think, at least for me. It sounds like it was for lots of others also. I appreciate this very much, as I'm sure we all do as we're learning to make these calls and to take command over our astrology. And I apologize to everyone. The handouts were done kind of at the last minute. I'm not sure when they were put on the website. They weren't sent to me, so we didn't get them sent to you. So I apologize for that.
Well, I think I have to apologize for you, Patricia, because I was a little slow in getting them to you.
I think everything was perfect and beautiful, and I too am very rooted in a ton of appreciation for this. It was very beautiful and valuable, so just thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you,
And
Patrick.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So grateful.
Thank you.
Will this be recorded? Will this
It
be
is
recorded?
recorded and it will be on the Golden Pathway website in the chat room, www.thegoldenpathway.org. And next month on